The next few poses will be done in a standing position. Please move slowly and at your own pace. Keep the sturdy chair nearby for balance if needed. If you find that I'm talking faster than you are moving, please take your time and do fewer repetitions. Take a nice deep inhale and exhale. Place the feet about hips width apart and grounded on the floor. Lift the toes and spread them nice and wide, and feel the navel pull gently in towards the spine. Push the toes into the floor and lean forward just a little bit. Feel the muscles that keep you steady. Lean back just a little bit and feel the toes come up. Feel the muscles that keep you steady in this position. Now push all four corners of the feet into the floor. Notice the steadiness of mountain pose. Notice how the steadiness of mountain pose feels. On the next inhale, roll the shoulders towards the ears, back and down so the shoulders are slightly open. Let the palms rest open to the side. Inhale and let the arms rise with the palms facing up. Exhale, bend at the elbows and allow the hands to come down the center line. Sink into the knees just a little. Repeat this again. Inhale, lift the arms with the palms facing up. Allow the hands and face to be relaxed. Continue with this movement at your own pace. Breathe as you move and try to coordinate the breath with the movement. On the next breath, lift the arms back over the head. Fingertips point in, palms face up. Imagine that you have candles in the palms of your hands and you do not want to spill them. Turn the fingertips so they face behind you. The palms remain up. Turn the fingertips to the side and then to the front like an offering, then out to the side walls. Breathe as you move, up to the top with the fingers facing in again, towards one another, and then forwards like an offering, then out to the side walls. Breathe as you move, up to the top with the fingers facing in again. Let's do this rotation one more time. After the second rotation, allow the hands to cascade down by the side and let them rest. Pause for one slow inhale and exhale. One more breath. Inhale, exhale. This next exercise is excellent for strengthening the spine and gently stretching the muscles of the back, front, and sides. Attempt to make the movement easeful and gentle. We will do these movements with various arm positions. The first arm position is the easiest. Please be sure to stay with the one that feels best for your body. We will demonstrate them all. Take the right hand to the waist and then the left. Roll the shoulders open. And on the exhale, lean to the right. Inhale to the center. On the exhale, lean to the left. Inhale back to the center. Roll the shoulders up, back, and down. And on the next inhale, gently pull the navel towards the spine. Pull the shoulder blades softly together. Get a small lift in the chin and feel a sense of lengthening through the front of the body. On the next exhale, begin to fold gently forward. It does not have to be all the way. Bend the knees slightly. Inhale and rise back to a standing position. Open the left arm to the side. Keep the elbow bent. Leave the right hand on the waist. Inhale. Exhale, lean slightly to the right, and then return back to the center. Bring the left hand down to the waist. Lift the right arm. Inhale. Exhale and lengthen to the left. Return to the center. Roll the shoulders open. Gently pull the navel in towards the spine. Pull the shoulder blades softly together. Get a small lift in the chin. Exhale and fold forward halfway. Inhale back to standing. Open the left arm again. Inhale, and on the exhale, lean to the right. Inhale and return back to the center. Place the left hand on the waist. Lift the right arm. Inhale. On the exhale, lean to the left. Inhale and return back to the center. Roll the shoulders open. Lengthen through the front of the body. Slightly pull the shoulder blades together. Get a small lift in the chin. Exhale and fold forward. Knees slightly bent. Inhale and return to standing in mountain pose. Pause for a moment. Inhale and exhale. For this warrior sequence, attempt to keep the movements gentle and relaxed. If you notice that you are struggling, move the feet closer together. Lower the arms or make the movements smaller. This pose is great for strengthening the legs, respiration, and opening the shoulders. Step the left foot forward just a few feet. The back foot points in at a 45-degree angle. The front knee bends and the hips face front if possible. Inhale, open the arms and bend at the elbows. On the exhale, bring the hands and elbows towards each other. Inhale, open the arms and push the heart softly forwards. Relax the shoulders. Exhale, bring the arms together. Inhale, open the arms to where you feel comfortable. Exhale, relax the arms inwards. Inhale, open and expand. Exhale, contract. Inhale, exhale. Bring the hands back down by the side. Return to mountain pose. One breath here. Inhale, exhale. Step the right foot forward. Take a moment, there's no rush. Ground the back foot into the floor. Bend the front knee. When you are ready, open the arms. Inhale. Exhale, bring the hands and elbows towards one another. Inhale, open the arms. This is a relaxed opening in the chest. Exhale, bring the hands and arms towards one another. Inhale, repeat again, creating spaciousness with a full inhale. Exhale, contract and relax the arms slightly. 2 more times at your own pace. Inhale, open. Exhale, close. Let the hands rest down by the side and return back to mountain pose. Pause here for a few breaths.
Welcome back to the 27th online episode of Peacetime, hosted every Sunday morning by Peace Point with myself, Phra Nicholas Thanissaro, live streaming from Dhammakaya International Meditation Center in Azusa, California. Today's session will be about an hour and 10 minutes long and will consist of a 20-minute talk and 25 minutes of meditation, finishing up with 20 minutes of conclusion, answers to your questions submitted in advance, and news updates. Last time you saw me, we introduced Buddhism and Buddhists. With the Dhamma talk today, we will continue with our exploration of living Buddhism with the topic Buddhist historicity. As usual this session, I would encourage you to send in any questions you have by emailing me at peacetime.questions@gmail.com so that I can have a shot at answering them next time round. This session sets out to explore the particularly Buddhist connection between mind and environment, and to diffuse the misunderstanding that Buddhism is outside time or outside history, akaliko as it is known in Buddhist terminology, or as if Buddhism has no interest in historical context of its teachings. Myths are tales that have been passed from generation to generation, often not because they are true, but because people find them useful to explain human needs or justify human ends. Even in the present era, we have not dispensed with myth-making. Some features of Western liberal secularism are so deeply ingrained in the collective conscious that we fail to recognize them as mere theories to justify our way of life. Late postmodernist myths start with the assumption that the present civilization is more advanced than the civilizations that have gone before, as if the West invented progress, leaving behind a past as flawed, short-lived primitives who had gradually improved to a zenith of leading-edge technology through the application of Western originality and democracy to bring civilization to the world. The European Dark Ages are wrongly assumed to have been a worldwide phenomenon. The gaps in the fossil record are overlooked, and any bones that don't fit into the sequence from simple to complex are assumed to be anomalies or outliers. To give a well-known example, the slide shows the Paluxy River trackways in Texas, where fossilized human footprints are found in the same rock strata as the footprints of dinosaurs, meaning both sets of footprints are contemporary. Scientists work around the lack of fossil evidence in the rock strata so old that any fossils would have been crushed under the rock's own weight. Similarly, modern medicine is assumed to have a monopoly on life-extending breakthroughs, while evidence that successful surgery was performed by Ayurvedic healers in India thousands of years ago is dismissed. In our modern era, renewed outbreaks of pandemic proportions or resistance to antibiotics are assumed to be just an exception. That science is leaving cosmologists and particle physicists with more questions than answers, since the breakdown of the law of relativity is considered but a temporary setback. As Robert Thurman said of modern methodology in his 1991 book, The Central Philosophy of Tibet, we still assume that there is no end to what we can know, and newer discoveries are always more valuable than traditional ways of doing things. Technology is expected to provide new ways of prolonging human creature comforts and to banish threats of environmental crisis. Religions have myths too. Indeed, much can be understood about religious values and worldviews by studying the myths by which each religion defines itself. For example, Christians justify the authority of their God over humankind by citing the account of creation in the course of Genesis. Some consider the account a historical truth. Others think it is a mythical account from which important religious understandings can be derived. Just as for cautionary tales, most agree that the conclusions derived from myths are more important than whether they are believed. The same thinking has been applied by mostly Western scholars to Buddhist scriptural accounts, some of which are central to understanding the way Buddhists justify the theory of mind over matter. On perhaps no other subject than the origins of the universe has more variety and ingenuity been brought to bear. Experts of all stripes have for centuries strived to explain how human beings could arrive on Earth by accident and then randomly develop to sophistication in such a short period of time. The theory of evolution is one of the responses to the questions posed, and the Buddhist take on evolution will be addressed in one of the latter sessions of this series. Other versions of the origins of the universe include creation in the Garden of Eden and Chandra Wickramasinghe's proposal of infection of planet Earth with bacteria from a passing comet, or panspermia. The astronomer Carl Sagan famously accused religions of dishonesty when filling the gaps in our ignorance, saying, "The fact that religions can be so shamelessly dishonest, so contemptuous of the intelligence of their adherents, and still flourish, does not speak very well of the tough-mindedness of the believers. But it does indicate, if demonstration were needed, that near the core of the religious experience is something remarkably resistant to rational inquiry." From the first session, it will be recognized that questions such as the origin of the universe are considered unproductive to Buddhist practice. Nonetheless, to put Buddhist endeavor into some historical context is important, to explore whether Buddhism has its own historical view, or whether Buddhist views about origins have any parallels with scientific theories already proposed, to explain the cosmology of the universe. The most common scientific explanation of how the universe began is that of the Big Bang, a giant explosion that explains why the universe is observed by its redshift still to be expanding today. It is presumed that the universe might eventually run out of expansive energy and implode on itself at the end of time, with an event called the Big Crunch. By the second law of thermodynamics, the energy of the universe is dissipating and running down in an irreversible process known as entropy. Heat in cold objects dissipates irreversibly into cold objects. Order tends to become disorder. Light tends to become darkness, and warmth tends to become cold. If the universe is a closed system, one day the available energy will all be dissipated, and when this happens, the universe will come to an end. Thus, the scientists argue the universe should have a beginning and an end. However, when they try to model what happened in the first 10 million trillionths of a second after the Big Bang, they cannot explain this scientifically. The Big Bang is not the only theory of the beginning of the universe. There is also the steady-state theory of the universe championed by the British astronomer Fred Hoyle, which portrays the universe as unchanging, and the oscillating or cyclic universe, which portrays the universe as arising and disappearing in cycles. Big crunches are followed by new Big Bangs. Some theories explain that the universe didn't need to have a beginning at all. Gott and Lee, in their 1998 theory from the Princeton University, have shown that mathematically the universe didn't need to have a beginning at all. It could be self-creating, and in their words, the universe could be its own mother. A time loop could have existed before the Big Bang without violating any of the laws of physics. Any event in the universe could have another event preceding it, say the scientists. In Buddhist scripture of both the Theravada and Mahayana, specifically the Buddha's Aggañña Sutta and Chakravarti Siyanada Sutta, we are told about the beginning and the end of the universe in the context of a world cycle, or kappa, or in Sanskrit that would be kalpa. Similar to the explanation of Gott and Lee, the world cycle may not have had a beginning or an end. How the universe started is therefore not an issue in Buddhism. According to the Buddhist understanding, humans live in a vast cycle of evolution and entropy of the whole cosmic system, which, according to the Kappa Sutta of the Anguttara Nikaya, is a cycle that has 4 stages: decline, depression, development, and a golden age. What this means is that the human realm comes into existence, stays for a while, and then decays. The place in the cycle in any era is attributed to the quality of mind of those alive at the time. Life on Earth comes from beings reborn from previous world cycles, who survive as a result of their high quality of mind. Indeed, they managed to survive because they were self-sufficiently nourished by their own high state of mind. Quality of life in any era will depend on which stage of the world cycle it coincides with. And in what follows, I will try to describe each of the 4 stages in a world cycle in more detail. So let's start with the top of the slope of the period of decline, or Sanvatati Asankhaya Kappa. The Aggañña Sutta describes primeval times at the top of the slope of the period of decline in a way that clearly illustrates the connection between mind, lifestyle, and environment as introduced in the previous session. Before the Aggañña Sutta starts, the nature of the primordial people was that they had no physical body, they were semi-divine, genderless, and had a bright aura, large body size, and a lifespan of 100,000 years. Those beings had no sexual desire and were spontaneously arising. The nature of their minds was of high quality, with few defilements. The nature of their life at the time was that physical food was unnecessary. They lived in harmonious cohabitation, floated in the air, and traveled the cosmos. The nature of the world at that time was aromatic, like newly baked bread. In fact, it had just cooled down from a ball of fire, but had become habitable, with oceans covering the entire surface and soil curds floating on the surface of the water. At that time, the cosmos was dark, with no time, no daylight, no constellations, and no sun or moon. Sometime later, the primordial beings took up residence on Earth. The food available to those beings at the time was the curds of Earth, that required little or no digestion. The slide shows an artist's impression of the curds of Earth incident where, even though the beings did not physically need to eat anything, as a result of the beings' minds succumbing to the defilements of craving and greed, they started to eat the curds of Earth. As a result of this act of decadence, the nature of those beings changed so that they started to lose their aura. As a result of their actions, the nature of the world changed so that the staple food became coarser and took the form of nutritious mushrooms. Even the nature of the cosmos changed as a result of the incident, so that the stars, sun, moon, day, night, and time appeared for the first time. As some beings were brighter in appearance and some now darker because of the loss of their aura, the next defilement to which the primordial beings succumbed was discrimination against those lacking in radiance, perhaps the first recorded instance of racial discrimination. As a result of this prejudice, the food available to all the beings degraded further, with the mushrooms being replaced by a nutritious creeper, which still provided all the necessary nutriments for a long and healthy life. Eventually, even the creeper became more scarce, and people had to resort for food instead to a sort of huskless rice. Although such food might be considered inferior to being sustained by mind energy, it was vastly superior to the nature of food in the world today, where it's necessary to cultivate or hunt to obtain a balanced diet, and the nature of food curtails our lifespan. The high quality of the food reflected the higher quality of mind of the beings inhabiting the world in those days, as compared with the people inhabiting the world today, many of whom cannot go through life while maintaining the 5 precepts. Both hunting and cultivation involve corruption of the first precept about killing to some extent, whether it be trapping and maiming live animals or spraying insecticides on fields of crops. It's often asked who'd be the one to provide foodstuffs in the world if everyone were to keep 5 precepts. And the answer is that if everyone in the world were to maintain 5 precepts, as in those primordial times, when everyone has a high quality of mind, food would be plentiful itself by the improved nature of the environment brought about by a society that kept 5 precepts strictly. Food of high quality would be available for free without anyone having to go to the trouble to hunt, trap, or cultivate fields for the purpose. Thus, vegetarianism is a moot point, because it only deals with what is eaten without defining the actions used to procure the food. As we shall see, the 5 precepts remains essential to restoration of a high standard of living in the environment. So, to summarize, the nature of the minds of the primordial beings at this point in the period of decline was swayed by the defilements of arrogance and conceit originating from their discrimination. As the primordial beings themselves started eating material food, their bodies became too heavy to float and they became earthbound. Originally, the celestial beings had no gender. They looked human, but had no sexual desires. However, because the staple food became coarser than before, it needed more digestion. Therefore, internal human digestive organs started to develop. With excretory organs, there was a development of sexual organs. Sexuality appeared as a byproduct of the difference between sexual organs for males and females. Those who in the past had relatively less unexpiated bad karma from being unfaithful to their lawfully wedded, ended up with male reproductive organs. Those who had in the past relatively more unexpiated bad karma from being unfaithful to their lawfully wedded ended up with female reproductive organs. Ironically, instead of one gender looking down on the other, as had happened with those of light and dark complexion, something completely different happened. They were actually attracted to one another. And before I get accused of misogyny, I should point out that according to the Dhammapada commentary on the life of Surya Thera, there is no man who has never been a woman in his past, and no woman who has never been a man in their past. Since there is believed to be a degree of choice whether a person arises as male or female because people choose the karma they choose to accumulate for themselves, Buddhists traditionally focus on rectifying karma rather than getting indignant about lesser status being accorded to females. Anyway, once the men and women started to become attracted to one another, they wanted to pair up. Once they wanted to pair up, they were ashamed of any form of intimacy which occurred between them, because normally the ideal of the primordial beings was a celibate lifestyle. If certain individuals no longer maintained a celibate lifestyle, they had to find a place of secrecy to hook up. And this started to be the settling down of couples, where they would build houses, not to live in or to keep the rain off, but to hide what was considered shameless behavior. So this was the start of domesticity. Some beings start to reproduce sexually instead of new beings arising spontaneously as before. They got married, and they lived in families in houses and start to have offspring. From that generation onwards, there was no more spontaneous arising of men in the world. Reproduction was by sexual reproduction between husband and wife. This was how the level of morality declined from the level of the 8 precepts down to the level of 5 precepts. So we can see as society developed or devolved, the staple diet and environmental degradation were contingent on the eruption of defilements in the mind of these high-minded beings. At this point in history, the nature of the human mind was under the sway of the defilements of passion. The people had the external features of gender, and couples had started to settle down, had been shunned and to some degree marginalized. But later on this became the norm. At the beginning of this era, the rice that was the staple food grew wild and plentifully around people's houses. It was not rice like the rice in the present day. The grains of rice were giant in size, with about the same size for one grain as a durian in the present day. If you picked up one of the grains of rice hanging down, then by the next morning it would have grown back with no scar left on the stalk. At first, those primordial people gathered only as much as they needed. They did not need to cultivate the plants because what they gathered would grow back overnight. Eventually, some of the gatherers got lazy and started to collect more than they needed and hoarded it so that they didn't have to go gathering food every day. Others followed the trend, and eventually there was not enough stable food to go around. Still others, who had a disposition to enjoy killing, took up hunting of wild animals, breaking the first precept in the process, and they ate the flesh of their prey, even though they could have sustained themselves more healthily on the huskless rice. The result of a lack of moderation in food gathering caused the staple food to become even coarser, in other words, husked rice, forcing gatherers to have to cultivate it to survive. In order to provide for each family, they had to divide up the crop areas into personal plots. There was a division of common land into plots, fields, provinces, and then countries. The nature of the human mind at this point was under the sway of laziness. The norm of life was domesticity, agriculture, and territoriality. Because the food was not enough to go round, some were not satisfied with what they owned. They encroached into the plots of others and stole the crops. When questioned, they lied and said they hadn't stolen anything. Eventually, they stole again and were caught red-handed. When they stole from each other, the society reacted angrily to them. They beat the thieves with sticks and threw rocks. Thus, from stealing and lying developed censure and punishment. Eventually, they were at their wits' end and thought it might be a better idea to have a person designated from their number as a king, with the main duty to see justice done. Thus you can see the nature of the human mind was now under the sway of greed and deceit. Life was marked by censure and punishment, leading to the appointment of a ruler and judge. The first ruler was nominated by the people. This was the start of kingship before society itself started to fragment further. The first king ruled the whole world. Kingship served to slow the decay in society. Other functions of society developed in order to solve other problems. For example, the people in society assembled for meetings to solve large problems affecting the whole of society. If we skip to a slightly later point in the history, around the middle of the slope of decline, which matches with the current point in our history, during our time, human beings are characterized by clear gender attributes, reasonably large degrees of defilements in the mind, social disharmony and plurality within the limits of legality, widespread ignorance of meditation. 5 precepts are kept only by a few. Sexual desires are encouraged and celebrated to some extent, and lifespan is only 75 years, and we have medium body size. Now we skip to the slightly later point in history, to the bottom of the slope of decline. The scriptural descriptions of previous world cycles are tantamount to a prophecy of a race to the bottom that we can expect to befall us in the not too distant future, and this is to be found in the Chakravarti Siyanada Sutta. This scripture describes a time when the number of defilements in the human mind has increased further still. Greed, hatred, and delusion occlude the goodness in the human heart. Lifespan has been severely reduced. In some periods, there will be a resurgence of spiritual interest in some sectors of society, but eventually spiritual knowledge will become more and more diluted. And with this decay will come immorality, social fragmentation, enmity between parents and children, teachers and students. People will live in fear of each other, and the world will dissolve into anarchy. There will be an all-out war, and the lifespan of human beings will be reduced to only 10 years. There will be a time of worldwide dehumanization, where the majority of people will be annihilated. People will start hunting each other, eating each other's flesh for food. This period is sometimes referred to as the Kali Yuga, which is a concept that also appears in Hinduism. At the end of the period of decline comes a second period known as the period of depression, or Sanwato Asankayagapa. After this period of dehumanization and annihilation, there will be some groups of people who will escape. Some will hide in the forests, some in the mountains, and they will manage to survive on fruit and berries in the forests. This period of depression will last for a very long time. At the end of the period of depression comes the period of development, or Vivattati Asankayagapa. At the beginning of this period, eventually the survivors will come out, embrace one another weeping, and greet one another with the words, "Have you survived as well?" These groups of people will start another civilization, which will shun suffering and hate violence. A new civilization will emerge with technology and morality. Anyone lucky enough to be born in such an era will find that people around them will value virtue, and this will manifest itself right from the time they are born. Associating with other virtuous people right from childhood, it will be easy for them to excel in the practice of virtue. During such a phase, the lifespan of human beings will increase corresponding to the purity of people's mind and environment to tens of thousands of years. At the end of the period of development comes a utopian plateau called the Golden Age, or Vivato Asankayagapa. Eventually, a very powerful universal monarch with sufficient virtue by peaceful means would unite the whole of the universe under one kingdom. The universal monarch will reign in a golden age of long lifespan and morality for a long, long time. So today, before we go further to look at some of the features of the connection between mind and the environment, let's take the opportunity to settle ourselves for 25 minutes of meditation. If you would like to find a comfortable sitting position for yourself now as you listen to my guidance. So I'd like to invite everyone to close their eyes very gently. Relax all the muscles of your body. And make sure that your breathing and your circulation are relaxed and unimpeded. If any part of your body is not completely relaxed, then adjust your body to minimize any possible aches or pains. Try to find a position for yourself by which you feel alert and yet relaxed. Although our meditation is mostly about relaxing our mind, we must spend a few moments to relax our body first. Because if our body is not relaxed, it's going to be difficult for our mind to relax. So we start by relaxing the muscles of our forehead, our eyebrows and eyelids, making sure our eyes are only very gently closed. We never squeeze our eyes closed, but close our eyes gently in the same way we close our eyes to go to sleep. And we relax the muscles of our face, our neck. We relax both shoulders, both arms, down to the tips of our fingers. We relax our chest, trunk and abdomen, both of our legs, down to the tips of our toes. So that all the way from the top of our head to the tips of our toes, there's no part of our body with any stress or tension anymore. If we notice any tension remaining in our body, we do our best to relax it completely. As if our body melted away into the atmosphere around us. As if we had forgotten about our body completely. Now, with our body relaxed, we also take a few moments to relax our mind. The easiest way to relax the mind is just to forget for a few moments about all the worries, all the things on our mind in our everyday life. Thoughts of work, friends, family, school. Thoughts of the future and the past. We put all of these thoughts on one side for the moment. Just like we cleared up all the documents on our office desk, put them away in the drawer, and locked it with a key. In the same way, we empty our mind completely of any thoughts. Instead, we make our mind light, radiant, spacious and refreshed. We fill our mind instead with happiness and joy, as if tiny particles of happiness and joy completely filled the mind, leaving no space in the mind for any other sort of thought. When we feel relaxed, both in body and in mind, very gently, using no effort at all, we imagine that inside our body is just an empty space, with no organs or tissues, no muscles or bones. just a hollow space inside ourselves. If you like, you can imagine that your body is like a bubble. With a thin, transparent skin and hollow inside. With no organs or tissues, no muscles or bones. Now, very slowly and gently, at a point in the middle of our body, we remember the image of the bright, shining sun, which we saw a few moments ago. Maybe yellow or white in color, red or gold, it doesn't matter. If you can't think of the sun, then think of any other round, bright object which you find easiest to imagine. And imagine that object as continuously as you can, for as long as you can, with a very gentle attention. I cannot emphasize how important the word gentle is, because many people use too much force when they come to meditate. They think that if they stare or if they use force on their meditation, it's going to help them to get results. But in fact, it only stops the meditation from progressing. Therefore, be very gentle, be very light in the way you place your mind in the center. If you find your mind wanders anywhere else, as soon as you realize, always bring your mind back again to the center of the body as before. If your bright object disappears, you can always think of a new one. If the object changes in size, shape, color, or form, simply observe at its center. Observe always at the brightest spot in the center of the object. And before long you start to find that the object will evolve and transform of its own accord, changing to become an object which is more perfect inside us, such as a bright clear sphere like a crystal ball, or maybe a bright clear Buddha image inside ourselves. In the beginning, for those who are not used to meditation, the mind will wander a lot. The sounds around us, sensations in our body, or thoughts in our head. But our job as a meditator, if our mind should wander, so is to bring our mind back again to the center each and every time. However many times it takes for our mind to settle in the center. In the beginning, the object which we can observe in our center will not be very distinct. It may seem lifeless, or maybe as if it's flat and dull, maybe as if we can see only part of the object. Later, as our mind becomes more settled in the center, the object will become more lifelike. We'll be able to see the whole of the object, as if we were seeing it in 3 dimensions. And the feeling we get from looking at the object will be different from before. Now the object will give us a feeling of joy when we observe it. Feeling of joy which helps us to keep our mind on the object the whole of the time. Because if our mind wanders away, that sense of joy will disappear. We keep our mind always at the center of whatever we see. What we find is that the object will become gradually clearer, softer. Now it will be an object not the same as the one we imagined, but an object which occurs by itself, spontaneously arising object. If we keep on observing at its center, the object will transform further to an object which is of the form we can expand or contract at will. Till eventually it will become an object which is so clear and bright that we know it's something different to what we have experienced before. Often bright, sparkling like a diamond, brighter than the midday sun. Giving a sense of expansion in the mind, whereby we see that this point in the center is no longer a point, but it's the beginning of a pathway. Pathway like a bright tunnel which seems to lead ever downwards inside us. With or without Buddha images inside. It's our job simply to rest our mind in stillness at the center. And as soon as our mind is sufficiently subtle, the mind will go deeper inside. Deeper to draw upon the knowledge of all the Buddhists inside us. Along an axis which eventually will lead us all the way to Nirvana itself. Purifying and clarifying the mind as we go. So now for a few more moments in silence we cultivate the mind. Stillness at the center. With or without a bright object. Or simply observing what is already there to be seen. Each their own practice now in silence until we come to the appropriate time. Don't forget if your mind wanders anywhere else. No matter whether it be to the sounds around you, sensations in your body, or thoughts in your head. As soon as you realize, always bring your mind back again to the center of the body as before. Keep our mind always at the center of the body the whole of the time. The center of whatever inner experience we have attained for ourselves. Whether it be a feeling of stillness inside, brightness inside, sphere inside, inner bodies inside, or Buddha image inside ourselves. Place our mind gently
at the center of whatever inner experience we have achieved. And allowing our mind to come to a standstill at that point, we gradually make a wish at our center, at all the merit coming to us from our taking the 5 precepts, from performing Buddha Puja, and from our meditation to straighten out our views, calm our mind. May all this merit come together as a clear sphere of merit in our center, helping to attract into our lives all the very best of things, opportunities and people, while helping to protect us from all dangers, leading us to success in our lives, whether it be family or business, giving us the encouragement we need to do goodness throughout our lives, whether it be studying hard as a child, working hard as an adult, educating our family to know the difference between good and evil. Make a wish on the basis of this merit for the last few moments of our meditation.
Sappa Buddhanupavena, Sappa Dhammanupavena, Sappa Sankhanupavena Sattha Soti Bhavantu Te. So if you would like to come to the end of your meditation for today, you can gradually open your eyes again. If you feel at all uncomfortable, then slowly try changing to a more comfortable position, and then gently finish your practice. So to continue, Buddhists consider that spiritual teaching will never flourish where people have an average age of over 100,000 years, because people will become complacent owing to the lack of any urgent evidence for mortality. If someone still looks young at the age of 100,000, they are more likely to believe that they are immortal than to see the point in putting any effort into training themselves. Spiritual teachings will also not prosper when the human lifespan is less than 100 years, because lifespan is so short that it hardly allows the practitioner to see any benefit from practice during their lifespan. However, during the mid-part of the period of decline, which we described earlier, spiritual teachings will flourish because people easily see the unsatisfactoriness of life and the result of developing themselves spiritually, in spite of the deterioration of the environment around them. This is why traditionally the Buddha was said to choose a specific time in history to arise on the earth for his dispensation, using 5 criteria called the Pancha Mahavilokana, which are laid out in the introduction to the Jataka stories. The conditions for the arising of the Buddha in the world comprise Suitable lifespan, or gala, meaning the average lifespan of a human being should be between 100,000 and 100 years. Suitable timing, or tesa, which means arising at a time when the world is not in the middle of a war or a pandemic. A suitable continent, or dipa, which means our planet rather than other alternative Earths in the cosmic system, and I'll go into the alternatives on a later session. Suitable social sector, or kula, which refers to the dominant caste in society at the time. Sometimes it is academics that rule the roost. Sometimes it is theologians, sometimes warriors. The Buddha would make sure that he arose in the most influential sector. And finally, he would have to survey the world for a suitable mother, or mata, because without a mother of exceptional virtue, he would not arise effectively in the world. This is why Buddhism only appears on the midpoint of the period of decline, and in our world cycle we are at the point where the Buddha has been and gone 2,600 years ago, and what remains of the teachings is gradually fading from people's living memory. Nonetheless, Buddhists in the present day would regard good deeds, apart from being of personal benefit, also to help slow down or freeze the process of moral entropy that is happening at the point halfway down the slope of the period of decline. So, as we said at the beginning of this session, whether you believe a myth or not is not as important as the conclusions you draw from it. In the case of the scriptural account that I've presented of the Buddhist world cycle, the conclusions you draw are particularly important because they concern the connections between the mind and the environment, which have bearing on the unique worldview of Buddhism. Therefore, I have 5 reflections about what we have learned today that concern the original nature of human beings, the entropy of morality, the average lifespan of human beings, racial discrimination, and the timescales involved. The first reflection is that the original nature of human beings is goodness. Buddhists regard the underlying nature of all human beings to be goodness rather than sin, and depending on the Buddhist tradition you subscribe to, every person is regarded as bearing the seeds of enlightenment. The nature of human beings in their unfallen state is thus egalitarian and compassionate. Although life at the beginning of the world cycle was in accordance with true human nature, it was a condition from which mankind was subsequently falls. The virtuous spirit has been corrupted by greed, discrimination, and a lack of contentment. How much we are able to recapture that original nature depends on how much we practice, but we do have the potential to reach back towards that original nature again. The second reflection is what we can do in the face of the apparent historical entropy of morality. Buddhist ethics is based on the principle that moral decay is a deviation from true human nature. Since Buddhists regard behavior to be a person's choice, then the prime mover in history and quality of life are the habits we allow to become ingrained in our personalities rather than an all-powerful creator God. The logic of interconnectedness and entropy based on morality provides Buddhists with sufficient cause to explain how things came into existence. It is greed or craving in the mind that sets things in motion and not some supernatural deity waving their finger to create things. Simply by the power of the mind, things come into being by themselves, in accordance with the laws of physics. Meanwhile, through the laws of ethical action and reaction, intentions in people's minds affect what happens in their lives and eventually in their environment. Therefore, rather than waiting for the government to come and fix everything, individuals must take at least some responsibility for what happens in society, because what people do affects how society is. And to this extent, we see that 5 precepts was a natural state of society before the fall, and even predates Buddhism. The third reflection is what we can learn about average human lifespan. The conclusion we would draw would be that long-lived giants once walked this earth. Are these the Nephilim that are mentioned in the Old Testament from antediluvian days of Noah? Well, if we were scientists, we would want to find huge fossils to back up the scriptural claims. To this end, some evidence has turned up, but some of it has been faked by Photoshop, as you can see on the slide. A picture that you can find easily by Googling it. However, there have been some genuine discoveries of outsized human fossil skeletons, and this slide summarizes the discoveries that have been made so far in North America. So there may be something more to the scriptural claims I've been talking about than you might originally have assumed. Although in theory, human beings could live for any length of time, in any era there is an average life expectancy, which changes from period to period in a systematic and global way. Of course, if epidemics break out or a country lacks health care, a life expectancy might be lower than the world average. The assumption of increased life expectancy in the present day is shown to be inaccurate if you follow the long view provided by the framework of the Buddhist world cycle. Going back to the time of the Buddha, 2,600 years ago, people are recorded as having an average lifespan of 100 years. The Buddha predicted that the average lifespan of people would be reduced by 1 year every century that passed. 100 years after the passing of the Buddha, in other words 400 BCE, the average lifespan of a human was 99 years. 1,000 years after the passing of the Buddha, that is the 6th century, the average lifespan would be 90. 2,000 years after the passing of the Buddha, that is the 16th century, the average lifespan would be 80. 2,500 years after the passing of the Buddha, that is the year 2000, the average human lifespan is 75. In the cosmic view of things, the present lifespan of humans is relatively short. As shown in the cycle of decline, human lifespan will continue to shorten until the average human lifespan is only 10 years. Human lifespan will be no more than that of a dog in the present day. In such times, teenage will happen at 18 months old. They will reach puberty at 2 years old and start looking for a partner. Although we are not there yet, we notice that human lifespan has decreased alongside a worsening of our quality of life, especially in terms of the way we behave. This is not something which happens automatically, but something that occurs because of our decisions. Since it's a choice, it's something which we can slow down or freeze if we take more care of the quality of our lives, especially of our own behaviors. We don't need to wait for our life expectancy to be reduced to only 10 years before we need to try to buck the trend by boosting wholesome behaviors in our life. The fourth reflection is to do with the very deeply ingrained but disastrous tendency of human beings to discriminate against one another on the basis of appearance. It is pertinent in this age of Black Lives Matter to realize that those of brighter complexion looking down on those of darker complexion has been with us since time immemorial. It is second only to craving as a prime mover in the destruction of our planet and our society. If we are unable to learn from the mistakes of history, then it will only accelerate the race to the bottom in our society in the present day. And finally, I'd like to offer a reflection about the time scales we're talking about here, because the time taken for a world cycle is very long indeed. The time scales involved are much longer even than written history or geological time. We're talking about cosmological time, where whole planets and galaxies come into being and then fall apart. The lengths of time involved are unimaginable, but it does help to explain why the physical records manifested by fossils don't extend back as far as some of the descriptions of history which we have in the Buddhist scriptures. In one of the Brothers Grimm fairy tales called Household Tales, there is a little bird which wets its beak on a glass mountain in Pomerania. when the mountain has been ground down in such a way, the first second of eternity is said to have passed. A similar metaphor is given in the Buddhist Samyutta Nikaya to illustrate the phenomenal timescales involved for a Buddhist world cycle. The length of a world cycle is said to be equal to the time it takes to wear a cube-shaped stone mountain 10 miles wide along each of its faces down to the ground by rubbing it once every 100 years with a light cloth. In years, one world cycle would take 256 multiplied by 10 to the power of 140 years. Thus, the end is not yet nigh, but factoring lifespan being reduced by 1 year for every 100 that passes, it might be merely 6,500 years before society as we know it breaks down completely, unless Buddhists or practitioners of compatible virtues are able to upgrade the level of morality in time. So, in the legend or scriptural account that I have described this session, we see that there has been a very strong connection between what happens in the environment, the quality of people's lifestyle, and also the number of defilements in their mind, such as the craving which the primordial beings succumbed to before they fell from their celestial state. What is important from all I've mentioned today is that the actions which we do affect the quality of our lives. There's an interconnectedness here. Hopefully today you have started to see why in Buddhism we link environment and the staple diet with people's quality of life and their quality of mind. You can regard this as a myth or a legend if you like, but at least try to understand why Buddhists make this link. Don't think the present age represents the pinnacle of human endeavor or society is always going to get better as a result of technology. All the signs are that society is becoming increasingly morally bankrupt, and the speed of deterioration of society is accelerating. Some people might claim that if lifespan is reduced by 1 year automatically every century, why should we even bother trying to make a difference? Fortunately, the speed of entropy is not set in stone. If people behaved with more integrity, the deterioration would be frozen in time, and although we might not be able to reverse it, certainly we could help slow the deterioration down. There's no reason that the 6,500 years left can't be extended if we respect morality and properly put into practice the spiritual transformation teachings we have learned. But if things carry on the way they're going, and I'm sure you're constantly reminded of the deterioration every time you turn on the news, then humanity will have a very limited future. But whatever your opinion on this, in the meantime, keep up the payments, both on your life insurance and your mortgage. In the sessions to follow, we will start looking at how to transform the world for the better by our actions. We'll start by looking at the logic of karma, and then we'll go on to see how we can prioritize good deeds while avoiding the bad. We'll tackle the question of how to distinguish between wholesome and unwholesome behaviors. In order to give definition of some of these, then I'll be talking to you next session about some of the qualities of positive energy known as merit and how this can be accrued and how this can help us to have more prosperity and more happiness in our lives. So we come to time for some answers to the questions sent in by viewers. This week the question comes from Jane Godfrey of Doncaster in the UK. Here comes the question. Does Buddhism have a view on the existence of guardian angels that differs from other religions? If so, how do guardian angels come about and what is their role? Do they look out for certain people who they have links to from previous lifetimes? Hi Jane, and thank you for another stimulating question. Angels, or as Buddhists call them devas, mean literally bright or shining ones. They correlate to what we would call an angel, yet they don't have wings. Such angels come in many shapes, sizes, and forms. Another definition could be a god with a small g, or a celestial being. normally residing in one of the numerous heaven realms. But on occasion they may come down to earth, particularly to help good people and listen to the Dharma, especially if the Buddha himself is teaching. Many people appeal to them for help or protection, which is why there are so many miracle stories about them. Angels respect and want to help human beings more when they practice good teachings, live a wholesome life, and are self-reliant. Such angels started out as human beings who led exemplary lives, becoming angels at the end of their human life. They may look out for a particular friend or a relative because they had a positive karmic connection to them in a previous life. They usually live for a really long time, like hundreds of thousands of years, until they deplete their subtle merit. Although Thai people set up spirit houses at the corner of their garden to accommodate or at least appease such beings, it is unlikely in most cases that they will manage to do much to change the house owner's destiny than they are already doing for themselves, because most of the clientele of spirit houses are probably just earth sprites, which have limited power to change things. For the more powerful heavenly angels, it would be exceptional for them to intervene in human affairs, as they would have to overcome severe repugnance in order to return to the human realm, which is said to smell particularly bad to the heavenly host. Exceptions can be made, however, for those who practice the Dharma to a high level of proficiency and those who like to keep their house nice and clean. One way such angels might help is to intervene when we are dreaming, when traditionally a guardian angel whispers in our ear. This could be a good sign or a warning. These dreams usually happen around 4 to 5 a.m. in the morning and are clearly memorable to the dreamer. The general message is that although Buddhists believe in the existence of guardian angels, sprites, and so forth, we should not pin our hopes on them improving our destiny or even finding us parking spaces. But we would be better to focus on forging our own positive karma during the short time remaining in our lives, because this is guaranteed to make a greater difference to our lives. But for today, let me finish up with a quick mention about temple support and a news update about the availability of meditation teaching in English. For those of you who like to visit the temple in Azusa to bring offerings, please be informed that we continue to use the new site for temple offering in the parking lot next to the main temple building between 10 and 11 a.m. each day. If you have trouble with the passcode on the gate or wish to visit at a different time, please call Jenny on 562-716-2961. There will be a monk on standby in PPE to receive the offerings and give a short blessing for visitors. English-speaking monks will be on duty on Wednesdays and Saturdays. A short ceremony for 5 precepts, meditation, and a blessing are given on the weekends starting at 10:45 a.m. Needless to say, the whole temple would like to rejoice in the merits of all continuing to take the opportunity to support the temple in this way. Meditation is particularly invaluable in this COVID era to help us cope with social distancing. In this respect, here at the temple, although there are still no face-to-face teaching sessions for the interim, you can continue to access Dhamma teachings in English at the YouTube channel called Peace Point Meditation or the Facebook page of Peace Point Meditation. For aficionados of Zoom meetings, another way you can access Peace Point content is to join a Zoom meeting, but bear in mind that there is no way to pause or replay the media on Zoom for those of you who are trying to take notes. For those of you who have been following my talks, you may be interested to subscribe to a YouTube channel which I set up in my own name, which can be found by searching for Phra Nicholas Thanissaro on YouTube, where I have uploaded more than 100 clips of meditations, Dhamma talks, funeral homages, talks for children, and so forth. Meanwhile, there are a few changes to the 2021 schedule from Peace Point. Every Sunday morning, you have now got me with live material and archived material on alternating Sundays. Venerable Sopon now appears every Thursday evening. Meanwhile, Peace Breaks from Peace Point are broadcast every Tuesday and Wednesday between 7 and 7:30 p.m. There is a silent meditation broadcast each Friday between 7 and 8 p.m. For the benefit of families listening in, there's also a special show for children in English known as Shining Stars that goes out at the new time of 6 to 6:30 p.m. every Monday evening, with bedtime stories and meditation short enough to keep the attention of younger listeners. Outside of the live streams and on-demand programming, there is also the newly updated MindGem app, which you can download for free, allowing you to listen to meditation and Dhamma talks in English on your cell phone, even when you are offline. I'd also like to take the opportunity to give a heads up on a new book written by one of our monks, Venerable Nick Gao Mahawong, formerly of San Diego. He just published the Buddhist Cleanse, the One-Day Spiritual Detox, which has the tagline, "Detox your life like a monk in 24 hours." The book is a short read at 96 pages, but at the same time quite a comprehensive and at the same time humorous look at the benefits of keeping the 8 precepts as part of your everyday life. It's available for $7.99 as a paperback or ebook from all your usual book outlets. So, for this session, we have looked at the topic of Buddhist historicity. For my next live session with you, which will, fingers crossed, be a week on Sunday morning, we'll be moving on to look at something along the lines of the logic of karma. For good measure, I would like to remind viewers that even better than posting thank you or great talk or sadhu in the broadcast comments, you can email your questions about meditation or what you've heard in the lecture to the email address as you can see spelled out on the slide, and I will do my best to answer those questions on my next session. In the meantime, try to stay healthy, avoid recklessness or complacency in the face of the virus, maintain a positive mood, speak only positive words, forgive others, extend good wishes to others, and meditate daily. Hopefully, as a result of today's session, you will now be able to see the ways in which you can help to stem the downturn in the moral decay of society and improve the environment and life generally for all of us by practicing increasing good deeds in your life, and you'll be able to understand better also how we make this connection between the quality of mind and the quality of environment in Buddhism. So for today, this is me, Phra Nicholas Thanissaro, signing off for this session. So long, folks, and stay safe.